Recorded. Welcome to the New London Housing Commission meeting of June 11th. Thank you for attending. This is a very exciting moment as we start our planning work with resilient planning with our HOP grant funding, which has been fully executed, and resilient planning and design team is here, the whole team. We've actually been feeling the effectiveness of some of these members already behind the scenes, and now they're all in front of the scenes. We've had Zach and Steve here before, and now we've got the full team. So I will call this meeting to order on a governance basis, so in case we need to vote on things. We have a quorum, and I would ask Tom and where's Amy? And Amy, if you would be voting members this evening, that will strengthen our quorum even more. So that's taken care of. We should, on a procedural basis, take care of the meeting minutes of March 19th, which you've received by email, and also there's a copy, an extra copy if you'd like, behind me. I will waive the reading of the minutes, and we have much more interesting things to get to, and I hope you've read them. But I will entertain a motion to accept or not. Nancy's so moved. Any second? Second. We have a second from Ann. Thank you. Any discussion? Any amendments? Reflections? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. None opposed. Any abstentions? One abstention. Tom is abstaining. Thank you, Tom. Motion carries. We have Marilyn on board too. Thank you, Marilyn. The bulk of this meeting and the best part is my handing it over to the team at Resilient Planning, who have been actually working with us a little bit behind the scenes and then did a wonderful presentation on work that they did at our last meeting, which is working on the GIS, Geographic Information System merger with our database to be used for all kinds of planning purposes, understanding what we have in our town, where we could go in the future. Just an amazing technological melding of these two terrific resources, and that will be a tool we'll use going forward. So that being said, I will hand it over to Steve Whitman.
I'm going to hand it back to you.
Oh, you are? Oh, okay. Project update on the HOP grant. Overview, I think you've all heard it, but let me just go over it again. We did receive the grant approval for $103,000 and some additional dollars above that for a planning study, a municipal planning study by New Hampshire Housing Finance. We have monthly reporting that we need to do back to them as to how we're spending it wisely and what we're doing to move forward. Steve and his team will talk about the 3 phases of the HOP grant. But it really is directed towards towns to try to figure out what they have and what they want. And then going forward from there, if we're ready and we think it's prudent for the town and the town seems receptive, we may or may not promote something to be approved or voted on by the town in 2026. So we have really a 20-month process, if I did that math right, to really do our homework, to dig deep and understand. And that's why Resilient's here, that's why you're here, and we have some funds to work with. We'll be doing some public sessions, forums, work sessions, what panels. We can decide how we want to do that. But we have some funds to work with to really do some very exciting things in venues where we will engage the public in a very deep and effective way. So that's sort of the overview, and that's why you can tell I've been so excited to work on it.
Can I just make a comment?
Yes.
So, Peter, I want to thank you on behalf of the town of New London for your tenacity and fortitude with both writing the grant application but then dogging it like a border collie with a bone. So thank you.
Thank you for those kind words. Thank you.
That was well-deserved recognition. So, okay, so let's see here. We were going to try to use a remote, and it's not working. So my name's Steve Whitman. I've met many of you at previous meetings when we were working with the town through funding that the town had allocated to the Housing Commission. What we want to do with you tonight is really just kind of frame the whole project, explain the project, answer questions that you have. Zach and Liz will go into specific detail about other aspects of the project. I'm just going to give you kind of an overview at the beginning. And so we also want to tell you the consulting team that you're going to have access to is expanding. So we'll introduce you to who those other members will be so that you can see how they'll be worked into this. Zach will go over the 3 phases of the project that we've worked on, kind of how they fit based on the HOP grant that the town successfully secured and based on input from both Adam and Peter so far. And then you'll be able to help us shape it from today forward. We're also going to talk a little bit tonight about how do we brand this so that it's not a mouthful for all of you every time you talk to somebody about something that's happening related to the Housing Opportunity Planning Grant for the town of New London. Like, there's got to be a better way we can get this across and start to get also a visual element of that. So when people see it, they know that it's open and accessible to them, that it's about data specific to New London, that it's something they can participate in, that no decisions have been made yet. You know, really try to embody the work that you've been doing so far up until this point, which is pretty extensive, and then build on that. So that's really what we want to try to do with the outreach and engagement, branding and outreach discussion. So the team, when we have been here in the past, it's largely been myself, Zach, Crystal, who's not here tonight, who works with us, and Crystal and Liz were kind of behind the scenes and really weren't getting full exposure to both you as a group and Town of New London because we had kind of a focused scope of work. So what we're able to do because you received the funding is actually bring Mark Fougere back. So Mark is somebody who worked with the town with this group. To look at your zoning and to talk about some of the changes that you have pursued in the past. He has a working understanding of New London. We work with Mark on a lot of other projects. We like the back and forth of seeing the regulations differently and being able to talk with a colleague about what we're seeing. And he has different client communities than we do, so he's able to pull in some other examples that are quite beneficial. And Mark's based in Milford, New Hampshire. The other firm is RKG Associates. They're based out of Cambridge, Massachusetts. We're working with them on a number of other projects. We tend to bring them in when we need a deeper dive on data than we can do just pulling census numbers and looking at the Regional Planning Commission's numbers. They have subscriptions to a lot of different data sources. They focus on demographic, housing, and economic data. And so we've secured them to work towards the end of this summer, taking a deep dive into all the data available for New London to paint a picture of what we can know about trends related to who's here and who's not, the type of housing units you have from a different perspective than what Zach is looking at with Adam and all of you. And then they'll look at the economic connection, because if we've learned anything in working in communities around New England on housing issues, is their economic issues. You know, if you don't have enough houses, you don't have enough access to employees, they're closely tied issues that I'm sure have been part of your ongoing conversations. So RKG has a certain amount of firepower and efficiency that we really like, because in a short period of time, they can take a really deep dive, they can present it to us in a really digestible way, in a graphic way, and that report will be one of the deliverables early on. And we can continue to mine that and revisit it throughout the process. We can use it to educate folks. We can use it to educate ourselves. We can use it later on to dispel some myths that might be out there about New London, and we can ask them to revisit things if there's additional data. And Eric, one of the principals of the firm, will not only meet with you all to go over the draft report, it'll probably be by Zoom for that initial meeting, but then he'll be here in person for phase 1, for something that Zach's going to talk about tonight, where we think having him here to go over the data and answer questions, in the flesh would be beneficial. So the 3 firms work very closely together. I was working with both of these folks today in another project. We're going to be with you for that 18 to 20 month period that Peter talked about, working through in leading up to making sure you have what you need and then can decide what you want to pursue. And there may be some things you want to pursue for 2026. There might be some things you decide you as a town just aren't ready for, you want to work on longer. You don't have any requirement because of the grant funds to approve anything or to be successful in your approval or adoption of anything. So it's kind of a wonderful opportunity that you have to really just understand, specifically what's going on here. The last two slides I have before I hand it over, in meeting with Peter and Adam and thinking about tonight, they thought it would be helpful for us just to talk a little bit about other communities we're working with that might help inform you and give you ideas of similar kinds of communities, or when we reference different solutions that are coming up in other places, you'll have a sense that we're doing this work in other places. Not all of those things are going to work in New London. They don't all meet the context of New London or the infrastructure available in New London or the desires of residents in New London, but they give us a toolbox of things we can look at. So these housing opportunity planning grants have really kicked up a lot of interest in understanding housing, so studying housing at the local level and making regulatory and non-regulatory changes at the local level. And so we've recently wrapped up work with Lancaster, New Hampshire. Zach and I are kind of finishing up work in Farmington, New Hampshire, and we're finishing in Bedford. We're just starting a project, the three of us, with the town of Jaffrey, and Mark is part of that team as well. He's also been part of the Farmington team. And these are towns that may not have looked at housing the way you're looking at it if the funds weren't available. It just would have been something that got pushed down the line that everyone recognized as a problem. And although the master plan is a tool in each of those communities, as it will be for you here, we'll use the New London master plan to kind of show the intent of where you're headed. Without the implementation action that this represents, it's hard to act on every master plan action. You have one person who's already busy, you have planning board that's busy, you're now all bringing extra capacity, and with this grant, a tremendous amount of capacity. And so we're just an extension of that to help you. A couple other communities, we did, with RKG's help, we did a housing assessment, and now we're working on a master plan update for the town of Meredith. And we've been working, while we were working with you, we've also been working with Enfield. Liz has been heading up the master plan update for Enfield, and I've been heading up the housing regulations with Mark. So we've been doing those in tandem because they had tight timelines and limited budget, so we were able to use the funds to do that. And the last two I mentioned Newbury for Tom, because that's where I got to meet Tom. I was working in Newbury. And that was before the state was providing funding. That was the town of Newbury thought it was important. They were, I would say, a trendsetter in that way, saying this is important, we're going to get out in front of it, we're going to start to understand it. And along with Newbury, Jackson did the same thing. When Liz and I first started working together, like 8 years ago, is that right? We got asked to go up and help Jackson, and they said, the elementary school numbers are dropping to the point that voters aren't going to support it. Nobody serves on the fire department anymore. Like, we're in trouble. Everything's a short-term rental. What do we do? And we learned a lot. This was a kind of a new approach to have these community conversations, to look at the town-specific data. And so I thank Jackson for kind of getting us thinking about this and pulling the residents together to really think about what could work there that might not work in another community. They've gone on to create a housing commission like yours, and to do many non-regulatory initiatives too, providing land for housing and doing some other stuff. So there's a depth of knowledge across the three firms that we're excited to bring to New London, and then you all help us shape it in a way that to make sure that would work for New London. Can't just be a solution from somewhere else that doesn't get tweaked and fit here and doesn't relate to the data that we know. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking, because I will talk for the next hour, so I'm going to give you the microphone.
Thanks so much. So you can click right on. I'll be talking about the three distinct phases of this particular project that internally and with Adam and Peter have been working to put together. It's also one of the handouts that you all have in front of you. The slides that I go through now are sort of boiled down and condensed even more onto this one pager, so feel free to take that and spread this information to whomever and wherever you think it would be helpful. So the first phase, well, the three phases, rather, are a discovery phase, a visioning phase, and a pathways phase. Hopefully this, just even those terms, as Liz will talk about in a little bit in terms of branding, hopefully those three words help us broadly understand what the goals of these different distinct phases are, and ultimately what the goal is to eventually choose a pathway forward, whatever that might be. There might be multiple paths that are chosen. So hopefully those three words stand out and help us understand and communicate what this project is. So I'm going to first talk about phase one, which is this discovery phase. Oh, thank you. That's my slide. I should also say that throughout this process and in each phase, we will be having an educational speaker series. What they look like exactly is still to be determined, but it will be an intimate and really critical part, which is the opportunity for us to communicate information to residents and also get some input from those residents. So how we gain input is still to be determined, but we will do it at each one of those events. So we're taking these speaker series as an opportunity to both communicate and also hear back and get feedback. Now I'll talk about the first phase, which is the discovery phase. So really, we've got two broad questions that we're going to be exploring. These are simplified questions. One is, what is New London? And for anyone that can remember back to the previous presentation where Steve and I were here, we put together, the town spent a lot of money and time developing this GIS tool. We'll now be able to put that tool into effect to understand what exists currently in New London. What is the baseline of existing conditions? So we'll we'll look at things like the existing land use, existing housing types, all of that information that the town is collecting through the assessing data that we then connected with the spatial parcel data. Now we'll be able to mine a lot of information from that. I will say, I think relative to some of the other projects that we've done, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, it feels to me like New London has a bit of a foot up because of all of that work that's already been done. If that tool didn't exist, it would have to be created now. So the fact that it's already done, now we're just using it. So the goal at the last presentation was to show you what this thing can do. Now in this discovery phase, we're going to actually do it. The other big question in this discovery phase is, who is New London? And so we're going to be leaning on RKG, the other team member that Steve just introduced, to help us with that. Be looking at those demographics and housing statistics from data that they're able to mine and really look at the trends and understand what specifically is New London dealing with right now, what exists in New London. So those are the two big questions that we're going to be exploring in that discovery phase. As I said, at the end of the discovery phase, we'll be having a speaker event. It'll most likely be myself and Eric from RKG, and we're going to be presenting on what we've found, what we've discovered. And some way, in some form, we'll be soliciting some feedback from residents, whether it's we have some questions when folks walk in the door, questions when they leave the door, what it looks like, we don't quite know, but we will be engaging with the public and with residents.
And we'll create that plan with all of you. It won't be a surprise.
Right.
So we have time.
Right. You can go on. So the second phase is visioning, and this is really where we get to sort of explore what could New London be. And so we're going to be looking at potential housing opportunities, things like housing types. What do residents like? What do residents not like? Are there certain areas where we'd like certain housing types? Think about walkability, accessibility. Are there certain neighborhoods that we want more accessible, more walkable? Are there areas that we want larger lots, a little more rural? So those types of visions are when we kind of throw them at the wall and see what sticks. And the next one is trying to understand and envision what kind of open space and conservation opportunities exist in town. So where do we want to focus housing development efforts and where do we not want to? So are there natural resources? Are there recreational assets that we want to maintain? So we can direct housing development in other areas while maintaining those open spaces that residents like so much. And again, lastly, you can go on, yeah. We'll have another speaker series. So again, who that is, we're not quite sure. What that looks like, we're not quite sure. But we'll do another educational speaker series where we will communicate the visions that have come out of this phase, and again, solicit some input and some feedback from that. The third phase is this pathways phase. And so now we ask the town, what direction or directions will you choose? So part of this process will be a regulatory review. So we'll look at the ADUs and other existing land use regulations. And then we'll obviously explore other town regulations. Steve mentioned the work that Mark does. So we'll be able to explore other towns and see what other towns are doing with their regulations. So based on discovery phase and that visioning phase and those regulatory reviews in town and in other towns, we'll be able to sort of present alternatives. And that includes housing approaches, regulatory revisions. So we'll present this information, and it's then up to the town and its residents to choose which pathway or pathways it wants to go. And again, at the end of this, we'll again have a third speaker series where we'll present these alternatives, these options to the town. We'll get that feedback, and we'll revise that process. So it is an iterative process. And just to reiterate, you can go to the next one there, Steve, that's the goal of this particular project, is to present these alternatives, present these ideas to the town, and see which one or ones they want to choose. That's the goal of this project and this grant. So hopefully that gives you a pretty good understanding of the three distinct phases. I think what I'll do next is take a deeper dive into phase one, and I'll walk us through the different steps and tasks that we have there. So we've identified 4 different tasks. The first one is this branding process that Liz will talk about in a little bit. We'll be launching a website. We'll have some initial outreach and engagement activities. That's what Liz will be talking about shortly. The second task is that what is New London question, where we'll be using that GIS tool to understand the baseline of existing conditions. And we'll be mining all that data that the town is already tracking as part of the assessing data. So that is the what is New London question. Task 3, we're going to look at those in-depth, that deep dive from RKG in the demographics and housing stats, and really those trends that we see, that they see. And this is ultimately the who is New London question that I mentioned earlier. You can skip the next one and the next one. And then task 4, again, is that outreach, engagement, feedback, speaker series. So again, it'll most likely be myself talking about task 2 and Eric from RKG about task 3. In terms of timeline, tasks 1 and 2 are sort of ongoing. We're kicking it off now. So Liz will be talking about the outreach strategies, some ideas. Today, I'm going to start as soon as I can diving into that GIS tool and beginning to mine some of that data. So that's really June, July. RKG and task 3 will be starting sort of end of the summer, August, September. And we're shooting for a speaker series event sometime in the fall, October, November. So hopefully that gives you a good understanding of all 3 distinct phases and a closer look at phase 1. I'm going to now stop talking.
Are there questions
Yeah.
for Zach? That was a lot probably to take in, and the handout's there, but if you have questions or ideas.
Any thoughts or questions at this stage?
Guess who's going to talk? So, Kearsarge, we're in a regional school district. I'm sure you guys have heard that, but I don't know if you, I think that needs to be looked at. We only had 105 graduates this year, which means that high school level is way down. I don't know how many of those 106 were even New London students. That's just a thought. And the other is, we have quite a bit of conserved land in the town. And what is your experience with trying to get some of that conserved land, whether, I don't think we can get it now that it's conserved, but as they're thinking about it, a small option of what am I trying to say? A block where they could do maybe some housing, and that be an encouragement to help them go into this conservation also. So blending conservation and a housing project.
I don't know, we'd have to look into this, sorry. Zach's more experienced with this, having worked for a regional land trust, but we'd have to look at the specifics of each case probably. In most cases, it would probably be difficult, if not impossible. But on future cases, I think going forward, forming a relationship so that you could be doing this. And he had, for another project today, he was showing us he had the equivalent of the, the scale of justice, kind of housing on one side and natural resources and conservation. This is a balancing act that we're running into a lot of places. So I think we're happy to have those conversations.
Yeah, Steve's right that trying to amend an existing easement is virtually impossible. But unless there's language in that easement that does allow for it. But moving forward, the town can begin thinking about providing language in an easement, or if the town's working with a land trust or other conservation group, to allow the language that gets written into the easement that would allow something like this in the future. There are land trusts that have done projects like this, and so it might be worth, for us already just to flag that and explore what case studies are out there where there's a real nice link and connection between conservation and housing.
Nancy?
So this has sort of been a recurrent theme, but two things come to mind that I continue to hear when I'm in conversation with different folks at different places. One continues to be the confusion of what workforce housing is versus Section 8 versus HUD subsidy programs for seniors and people with disability. But understanding that in as least a technical terms as possible. So it's the more than elevator speech. It's something that people can get their heads around. And then the second thing is a continued concern by a number of people that this is more than New London's problem. And so, again, working with the Upper Valley, and what is the regional approach to this, and how do we find that balance between what is New London's responsibility, maybe is the right word, or the right thing to do, versus what are our surrounding communities doing to contribute. So two things that I think we could continue to get better at messaging.
It's helpful.
Any other thoughts? Great. Let's move on to the next. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So I'm going to talk a little bit about public outreach and engagement. And so this is really a significant component of this project, and will directly shape the housing solutions and the paths forward that are developed later on in the planning process. And I think many of us know that any zoning amendments that are put forth have to be adopted by the voters, and they really should be shaped by those who live in this community, so that they best align with community priorities as far as how people want to see their community in the future, and how we can best kind of integrate these different goals and topics together. And so really in other conversations that we've had, the public outreach process is really meant to be grounded in this idea of education. So providing factual information for people to better understand New London's housing needs, and help inform us on a possible way forward. So what we like to do early on in this process with all of you is to develop an outreach and engagement plan. And so that's basically just a simple spreadsheet that we'll use to monitor the progression of outreach and engagement throughout the planning process. And so typically it includes all outreach strategies that will be used throughout the planning process, timelines and descriptions of each activity, and it will really serve as a guidepost to ensure that the community has numerous opportunities to participate in the planning process, and that decisions are being informed by community feedback. Additionally, it will include multiple ways for people to participate, as well as integrate different ways of getting the word out so that we hear from diverse populations of the community throughout town. And so you'll notice that in the handout that we've provided to you, one of the first categories is who are we engaging? And so we might have forgotten some groups on there, and we're hoping that you'll let us know tonight whether there's any missing. We already thought of one in the car that was missing. The Colby Sawyer students are definitely a population, and staff and other people who work at Colby Sawyer is a distinct group. But in general, we have other categories ranging from residents to property owners to youth and families and working adults, older adults. So there's a lot of different, we want to hear from cross-sections from all of these different groups in the community, and what their perspectives are, what their concerns are, what they're, what they're excited about, what they're scared about in relation to the future of housing. So we will plan on bringing you a draft outreach plan to the July meeting for you all to chew on and for us to have a deeper conversation about. So next slide. But for tonight, we did want to bring a list of some initial outreach and engagement ideas beyond the speaker session series that we wanted to have a conversation with you all about. And so we've utilized different combinations of these in other communities, but feel that in general, these are all strategies that are effective at getting the word out about a project and beginning to solicit input. And so, at the bare minimum, which Zach and Steve have already alluded to, we'll have some kind of a project website presence, having print or digital flyers, so whether it's images that can be posted on social media, whether it's print flyers that can be posted up in public spaces and community places that people frequent, postcards that are really easy to pick up at the town office or at the library, and just making sure that the project and the brand of the project is known and is available to different community members throughout New London early on in the project. This is going to be going on for a little while, so it's always a challenge to keep momentum up. And so that brand and it being on all of these different outreach materials will be an important way to kind of keep that consistent messaging out there. Direct communications, so this is really where we look for help from you all, as well as the other connections that kind of tendril out from this group, but direct correspondence with other related boards, committees, nonprofits, businesses, but we've found that the more direct communication there is, whether it's direct invites to speaker sessions, people feel included, like their time is valued, and so it's a little bit more extra work, but we've seen it to be very successful in increasing participation at events that are held. This is one strategy where not every town is excited about it, but we like to put it forth because if the resources are there and if there is any connections within the community to make it possible, then it's worth discussing. And that's some kind of informational video. So we're working with the town of Milford right now for a master planning project, and they just put together a really short couple-minute video advertising the project. It can be a really effective way to communicate a message that is not just written in an email or it's just a really easy way to absorb information about a project. And so I wanted to just pitch that and say that it's always a possible idea. Having a brand name and project logo, so we'll actually specifically talk about some ideas that we have to pitch to you all tonight, and also use that as a way to really start a conversation, because you might also have some ideas to bring to the table, and we really want to hear those. And then obviously the speaker session series, which are these kind of like anchoring outreach events that are going to be coordinated throughout the planning process, and are really going to be a place where we can design some really engaging graphic materials that are easy to understand about housing in New London and just about New London's issues in general, that are very digestible for the public. That's one of the biggest focuses, that we try to take that very complex information and boil it down to what do people most need to know, and make it really transparent where the information's coming from, and hopefully that will lead to some really productive dialogue. So again, these are just some initial outreach and engagement ideas that we will kind of begin weaving into the plan itself, but I'm curious to know any initial impressions on any of these ideas. Is there anything that you want, that you've already come here thinking that you want to see as far as public outreach within this process goes that isn't on here? It would be a great time to talk about that. And it's okay if you don't. This will be on the agenda for most meetings going forward. That's just a standing item, outreach and engagement.
I'll just chip in my own thoughts, not speaking for anybody but myself. Project website, something Adam and I have chatted a bit about. Kim has been out on well-deserved vacation, so we haven't included her yet, but it would be kind of exciting to have a link through the town website so you could see what the Housing Commission is doing, and it will be updated as something which takes work to keep it updated. But it's a good place to put resources. It's also a terrific place. I like the idea of some cards and flyers, because you could, with permission, of course, for example, at Hannaford, be handing out little postcards with a QR code on it. Say, hey, by the way, if you want to find out what's going, we had a great meeting last week with the Housing Commission and Resilient Planning and Design. Hit this Q code and it'll take you to the town website and show you what we're doing. And so it's just a card, and maybe some will be thrown away, but it gets the word out. So I kind of like that idea of postcards. Direct mailing is hard, because all we have really is Municipal Matters, which is the town newspaper, town municipal newsletter, I guess is the way to put it, which comes out generally every month, or if there's something really big to put out. But that's a good resource. But as far as a direct mailing, that could be a challenge, but I like the idea of some cards and posters. Informational video, I do want to point out, we should really congratulate Adam for doing a video before the town meeting vote, which was not entirely successful for rezoning efforts, but it was a very good explanatory video that Adam put out to explain issues of housing regulatory change that were being proposed by the planning board for town meeting vote. And it was I don't know, 3 minutes long, but it was really well done. And
That's great.
normally videos can be sort of, I would say, fluffy, but when there's a message and some outreach that we really want to dig into, I think it could be good. And I'm not saying that Adam is the only one to do it there, although he was very good. I was thinking maybe Ann would step forward. No, I'm kidding. But I like that idea. Again, these are just my reactions. Brand name and a project logo, I think is kind of a neat idea, because again, it can go on the postcards. People get used to seeing it, and it will be easy recognition, because they'll see it and they say, well, I wonder what's going on there. So branding is really important. I mean, really, the bottom line is we work for the people of the town, the voters of the town, and that's who we're trying to connect with. And if we can help them, make that easy for them to engage with us, we should do what we can. And speaker sessions and series and materials, absolutely. So my thoughts.
Great, thank you.
I'm just going to make a comment and I was laughing because I've encountered this several times in the last couple of weeks. We have a part of our population that don't really understand what a QR code is or how to use it, so we need to use it sparingly. Just a word to the wise.
A
Have
nice
both.
succinct
exactly.
web URL address.
There
that
you
can
go.
be typed in, yeah, absolutely.
For some, that may even be a challenge, but just
Yep.
letting you know that
Yep.
Adam's next video is going to be on how to do that.
I think you could do a team, you and Will. So in following up with what was just said, and the vote that did not pass at town meeting with the detached ADUs, I would dare say that a large number of the people that voted no don't know how to run a computer and get into a website.
Yep.
It's just a huge challenge for the town of New London. I had someone call me at 7:30 this morning to ask me if it was a selectmen's meeting tonight. And I said, you should look on the website. And she goes, oh, I have to go to the website? I mean, jeez.
Well, and potentially, that's where we might want to be really strategic about getting the word out about these speaker session series well in advance so that people can actually come to a meeting and say what they need to say, and even have an alternative way where they can provide feedback at the town hall and have that be really clear on whatever poster or flyer and I'm speaking a little, jumping the gun, but it could be worth talking about a direct mailing if that's the case too, because that way someone would be able to get a card in their mailbox and that they would be ensured that they would find out about an event that way just from having a postal code in town.
But I wouldn't rule out simple language in the shopper
Totally.
and the inner town.
Great.
Because those are the two key informational pipelines for the non-tech savvy.
Is it non-tech savvy because of age, because of stage of life, because of education level?
All of the above.
So it's a variety of ages, a variety of reasons.
I would never make an ageist comment myself, but yeah, it's a certain part of our population.
So-
We're chiming.
One of the thoughts I had when you were talking about the video, because I'm going to circle back to like who are we trying to communicate with that won't look on the website. And this is important information because we can't
So,
reach that group.
I think that stating Will and Adam is not a bad idea because we're touching, some people know Will because he's the town clerk.
Yeah.
And people really trust him. And there's a lot of us that are not trustworthy necessarily.
Speak for yourself, Aunt Bedard.
But perceptions, absolutely, yeah.
But again, I think we have to get, if we're going to do a video, we've got to make it be brief and with people that somebody will stop and listen to and go, hey, I know that person.
I think that's where you all help us because you have that context. You know what gets people's attention, and we just don't know that as outsiders.
Yeah.
Thinking about what you said about workforce housing and other kinds of housing, in some cases, when we show you what the numbers are, you've seen the numbers regionally for what qualifies as workforce housing, and it can be surprising to people how
Right.
much of a salary and how much of a house you can either buy or rent that's workforce housing. You will likely know working individuals in this town who may feel that housing is an important enough issue that they'll step up and say, I'm happy to put my face to this, and be in a 30-second video to say, we can do the graphics, but this is what workforce housing is, and I teach in your community, I qualify for workforce housing. I work in your police department, I teach at the university, college. But whether it's that or senior housing or other kinds of housing, you might be able to help us, and maybe some of them will even come to the speaker series and be able to be there to provide their perspective.
And just the last piece, the group that Ann and I are sort of talking about, they're the ones who go to town meeting and vote. So
Right.
it's a significant population,
Yep.
because
But
it's
we
a
don't
challenge
like-
in who we get to town meeting.
We don't like to be out at night. God forbid we have to come out after dinner, right? But I do think that, I'm going already to the series. I'm not sure what time those should be, but we should always advertise there's food available. You
Yes,
laugh.
and we have the
You
budget
laugh.
for that, too. That's part of our budget,
Yep.
is being able to do that.
I just have a quick comment, and I might be a little bit late because I haven't been to a number of meetings, but I think that in the last few years, and any of you can speak up and correct me if I'm wrong, but we've tried really, really hard to be out there in the community and have speakers and have people hopefully listen to what it is we want to accomplish, what's in front of the town. And I still feel that there's a resistance to something, whatever that may be. And so I think it's going to be incumbent upon us to really provide what does it really look like, instead of what people are already thinking in their heads it looks like. And there are literally people in this town that just are like, you know what? The property behind Hannaford, somebody is going to build something there. So that's all set. We're all set now. We don't need any more workforce housing. We're all set. Do all those people know that that current project is stymied by whatever it is that's in front of them? And so they're not breaking ground when they said that they would? In other words, people kind of feel like that's one and done. So we already have to get beyond some sort of, I don't want to call them stereotypical, but some ideas in people's heads. And there are some people who will come to a planning board combination housing commission meeting, or a select board meeting that's with planning board, and it's, as Adam did, talk about what's on the ballot, and it's as if they're there for the very first time. Why do we have to have this? I don't understand. And from my perspective, it's, well, have you been paying attention? Because if you have, you would know some of the things that we are discussing, and rather than have your first thought in your head be the thing that you say in front of everybody, whereas everybody's already been there, already done that, already discussed it. So we sort of have this hill to climb, I think, with some people. And so and I dare say, on the back of what you and Ann were just saying, some of those people are the people that don't want to go out of the house. They only want to do what they need to do. They only want Will to tell them whatever it is they need to be told. So we really need to sort of engage people somehow to go beyond well, we don't need any workforce housing. It's already taken care of. There's got to be something else that we're somehow engaging their curiosity in and their participation in, and I'll stop talking now.
Those are good points. I would add on to that also some myths that I think we really need to bust through at some point. One of them is that more workforce housing means more school costs, more children and greater school costs. Maybe we'll discover that's really a solution, not a problem. But the other one is also more workforce housing means more taxes, higher taxes. And these are the kinds of questions that can pop up, and we need to kind of get ahead, study them, make sure we understand them, and convey them properly.
Well, I just thought of a heading for that. Mythbusters in the on the Kearsarge shopper. You know,
That may be
housing-
trademarked, so we may have to look at that, but. Sort of building on Amy and Peter's comments, that the position I'm in, I certainly get sometimes an inside look into people's housing insecurity, and a lot of times it's people who you would not expect that are known to many of the people in this room, and I think if we could somehow engage them in this process to tell their stories, so that it really sort of brings it home that these are people that are on different boards and committees in our town that are known, and whether it's them directly or it's their children or whatever story that they're able to tell, to really bring a context to it, that it's not this sort of off in some far land scenario, that it's really neighbors that we know that are struggling with housing insecurity. I would say In most cases, it really hasn't gotten to the point of homelessness because they've had some other resource of staying with a family member or coworker or whatever ability that they have, but they haven't been able to find their own housing. And I think if we can tell those stories and engage them in the outreach, it will help to sort of have everyone understand.
I think that's a great idea.
Peter and the rest of you, I totally appreciate everything that's going on here in terms of the planning and the phasing and all of that. But one thing we have to do is not just look at it in terms of specifics, but holistically, so that we can reach out and gather the information we need to share and be very careful of not being repetitive. Because if we told the same story we told this past year, then we're going to get the same result. So it's obviously it'll be more information. We want to share it in a different way in multiple fashions. But how we deliver the message and the words of the message are extremely important. So that's the bottom dollar. That's what sells the product. And if we can do that, I think we can. I'm just being overly cautious about how we present it and the words we use, because some people will not understand them. And we also have to reach out to as many of those different cultural groups or economic groups, whatever's out there, and reach out to them as a whole, but also that all of them will understand the process we're trying to go through. It's not easy, but I think this is a good start. This is where we're beginning. We're developing it. We're going to go on finally with the outreach and hopefully come back to the town again, if not next year, the year after, with some really good programs and initiatives and ideas. And we want the people to come to vote, and we want them to be very positive as much as we possibly can. It's a tough chore, but I think it can be done.
Good point.
Yep.
I'm sort of hoping, I don't know if you remember the advertisement, somebody goes like, they go, I should have had a V8. I sort of would like the community that comes to listen to our series and engage with us, they come away saying, oh my gosh, I didn't even know that. That's amazing. Now I'm starting to get a better understanding. For example, we're going to dig deep into the demographics of the town, and we're going to see some trends that will be enlightening and maybe a little uncomfortable. So I'm hoping we're going to have those V8 moments.
Just to add on to that, Peter, and to touch on the point that was also just mentioned, that it's important that we're not just telling the same story, and I think our reliance on data, whether it's the GIS data and that tool where we're mining the town's data, or it's RKG doing that deep dive into demographics and housing, the reliance on data and to present numbers and say, this is just what we're seeing. We're not interpreting it, we're just telling you all this is what's in town. So I think, part of it is the reliance on data to say, this is it. This is what New London has. Where do we go from here is to be determined, but that reliance on data, I think, is a critical piece.
Great, thank you all. And so we'll keep circling back to you all as we refine the outreach plan. You'll get a draft of that at the next meeting. And if there are any other mechanisms, aside from, I noted the shopper and a couple others that were noted, as just being good avenues for getting the word out to specific populations or to the community broadly, let us know. That would be great. Okay, great. So next slide. Okay. So branding a project, I think most of us probably know this intuitively since we, I think, are all affected by branding in general. But it can really help conceptualize, communicate, and foster an idea or a message very succinctly. It often will include some kind of graphic logo or brand name. And they can look a lot of different ways. This is just one example of one that we did recently, which was very simple and to the point. And so it was titled Bedford, A Place to Live. And so it was really meant to evoke a sense of community, essentially, like we all need a place to live. And so it really kind of drilled down to the heart, honestly, of the matter. I mean, we can talk about housing regulations and zoning and all of that, but it really is about ensuring that there is a safe and affordable place to live for a variety of different people. And a brand can really help distinguish an initiative, so we'll use it on any kind of materials that are created, on any advertising or flyers or posters, on the online presence, the whole gambit. And it creates a consistent image of the project as it continues to evolve over the next year. Again, we put one example on here, but we're going to pitch some potential examples that we've already discussed in the back end that you'll hopefully say, no way, or we have a better idea, this is how we think it could be improved, or we really like that one. So we're expecting any comments you have. We're not attached to any, but we wanted it to serve as a basis for conversation about a potential brand to move forward. So.
Don't panic. He says
I
it's
know,
gonna
talk
come
about, I'm
back.
like, drum roll.
It says
About
wave. Do
building
we have to wave
anticipation.
for it to come back? It says disconnected. Oh, it's gone away. Windows K. Hold on. But we don't know how to use it.
I think we're supposed to do it.
Yeah, right. So while Zach is fixing this, you wait to switch seats.
This is the extent of what I know to fix it. So.
We can say them too.
Can I-
They're not.
There we go.
Get your home screen. So, A Place to Live, the tagline for Bedford, we brought other names forward to the committee meeting. It was a committee much like yourselves, and we had a conversation that kind of got away from the names that we had in front of them. And it was a committee member that said, okay, at the end of the day, what are we talking about? And it's exactly like Liz captured it. And they just said it that way, and everyone was like, let's just do that. We really like it. It resonated with that group. It doesn't have to resonate here.
Totally. Yep.
So just a little of the backstory. We don't necessarily bring the best names in, but we always try to at least bring some names to get
Yep,
started.
to start the conversation, to spark your thinking, and we're happy to hear others if there are any that come to mind as we go through them. So,
Are we going there?
yep, go to the next slide. All right, so the first one is New London, A Way Home. The second one is New London, A Path Home. The third is New London, Our Home, Our Community. And the fourth is New London, Rooted in Place. And so we know that there's plenty of other options. We know that I'm sure some resonate, some might not at all, some might be landmines that we're unaware of. So that's all information that we don't necessarily have coming into this that I'm sure you're going to provide us.
Any gut reactions?
I'm curious to see what Amy has.
Well, I'm laughing because we are sort of rooted in place.
Not enough forward thinking in that one.
That's not, it wouldn't be.
Stuck in the mud?
Correct. That would not be one, because that kind of describes some of the stuff we have to get over, past,
Perfect.
through, and beyond. So we
Perfect.
wouldn't want that one.
So you want a more forward thinking, yeah.
Yeah.
The other ones seem a little bit more under that umbrella.
They seem more like Mayberry RFD.
And I'd kind of build on that so I had the same reaction, like rooted in place seems like it's conveying intransigence, which I think there's a good bit of that. Also, our home, our community sounds a little bit like this is ours, everybody
yeah.
else stay out. That one, I don't know, maybe I'm reacting to that in a different way than others. But I mean, I like the idea of like a way home, a path home. That's again a little bit more kind of
Forward
thinking. It also conveys the sense that this isn't just something that we, whoever we is just telling you, or you know, it's a pathway. It's a process. You know, I don't know. That sort of resonates, at least with me.
Yeah, John, go ahead. If you step up to the microphone. But this is sort of an open think tank
Yep.
approach, and we're not judging ideas, we're just trying to feel through it.
Yep.
Am I allowed to go back and ask questions from things?
Why don't we do that at the
Stay on
end?
this, okay.
Why don't we do that while
All right.
we're just
One of the
doing
things
free
I was
thinking here?
What about New London, a path forward
Yep.
as a possibility? And then I wanted to suggest, I think it's connected with this, if you're going to have any community meetings, I would suggest that you have it on a specific day each month so that individuals get used to the first Monday at 5:30, we'll have the X meeting or update, because then I think it gets on their calendar and it's easy to remember for all the reasons that we have some IT issues.
Thank you. Thank you. We will have more public comment later, unless you're doing thinking about this logo. Yeah, go ahead. I don't want to get too distracted, because when we're free thinking, we got to be free thinking.
Hello, Karen Epstein, and I hope this is free thinking. I would like to see an image that implies vitality. So when I saw Bedford, a place to live, I was kind of like, that sounds like a bedroom community. Just a thought. It is. And I would think a better thing that I would love for everyone in town, people that have been here a long time, newcomers, young, old, a place to thrive. Just a thought.
Good. Thank you. Good thinking. Any others?
I have a comment about, the town has an emblem with a great skyline outline on it. I would look at that. It was developed a long time ago, and it's got a lot of important peaks of our community. Yeah, the seal. The seal.
Yeah.
That's hard to see,
Yeah.
but it does
We do have
encompass
it.
different communities within our community.
Yep.
And I do like the word community.
Yeah, I like the idea of community, but let me digress for a moment. One of the things I wanted to do after the vote in March was to talk to as many people as I could who were for and against the zoning that we thought was going to be good for the community. And one of the messages that I got regularly was that everybody really cared. They really cared. And it was their position that was firm and strong and well supported with the logic that they had in their minds. And so I don't know if we can use it, but caring is something that everybody that I spoke to had. Passionate.
Just another idea. Totally understand the reactions to our home and our community. Another option is a home, a community. Just to throw that out. More similar to the first two. It's not ownership, it's a description of a place. It seems like caring, community, even if folks were opposed to the amendments that were proposed, they did care. They cared about the community, they cared about the town. So just another, you can take a similar title, and just a slight change of words can give it a different feel.
Absolutely. Now, that makes me think of another idea. Maybe it's good, maybe it's not. One of the things that is important to remember that a community is always changing. You can't stop it. You may say, I like it the way it is, and we do. We love it. That's why we're here and volunteering all our time. But also, it's going to be evolving whether you like it or not. And so we need to figure out how to manage that growth, that change. There are all kinds of influences. Look what technology does. Look what, there are all kinds of influences, social, public influences. That's a subtle message, but we can't forget that we need to manage what's happening instead of just ignoring it. Yes, please.
Sorry to be back so soon.
No.
But another thought that we just heard a lot from people over the past few months as the election was around is how people really value the rural aspects of this beautiful area. So just
Yeah.
want to put that out there. Thank you.
Yep. Good thoughts?
Having worked at the Upper Valley Lake Sunapee Regional Planning Commission, known as UVLS-RPC, I think brevity is something that we should focus on, and also what acronym can be shorted to. I think Kearsarge Neighborhood Partners has KMP is pretty quick and it's easy and it's a good, brand to put on something. And I said, and that's what I agree, Marilyn. I think 3 words is kind of where we should put that cap, and it's hard with New London already being 2 of those. So I think that, if we can, whatever that is, whether it's just New London, something that, is just sort of simple and isn't a mouthful, and even shortened is still short and easy to reference is important.
I think your guidance is excellent, and I think the New London piece could be left out a lot of the times. It's just there by reference, maybe it's in the logo. But I think where you're all starting to go, do we want to bring back a couple different ideas for next month? We don't need to have it launched for the July meeting, do we, Liz?
It depends.
Yep.
We can decide that.
So we could spend a little more time tonight, and if we don't, you might all need time to think about it too. Like some of your better ideas might come when you're not sitting at this table or in the audience. But we've had some good ideas that give us somewhere to start.
Yeah, and I feel like there were 4 that I heard that were at least kind of echoed as possibilities.
If folks have other ideas outside of this room, at dinner or what have you, send them to Adam and Peter and make sure those ideas are heard.
Yeah.
We do have to be careful of open meeting laws in the sense that we can't deliberate outside of a public meeting. We can one-on-one talk with each other, but not in a way of campaigning an idea, because I think I'm right. But I guess I would suggest if you want to put together some ideas that come out of this meeting, we can send them to the members of the commission, and we can put them on the webpage, and then we can determine pretty quickly after that. We can't vote by email because that's a breach, but we can have another meeting. And if we've got a lot of exciting work to do. I've tried to be scheduling meetings reflecting how much we need to accomplish. And if the meeting is not going to be productive, we don't have a meeting. So if we've got stuff to do, we'll meet again. And you guys can be Zoom or whoever can attend.
One other idea, if we have a hard time being brief, we may focus on a 2 or 3 word name that maybe has a slogan or something that goes with it that gets vitality and community character or something in it to sort of, be a tagline that, might get put on letterhead or something, but doesn't get used in how we actually refer to the project.
Right.
I feel like you just used the word, a vital community.
That one is taken by an Upper Valley organization, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Next slide. Last slide. So we did just also want to highlight, I feel like we mentioned this quite a few times tonight, so I won't belabor it too much more. We mentioned it in various different contexts. But because it's such a core component of the outreach and engagement strategy for this project, we just wanted to highlight it one more time. And so, like we mentioned, this will include 3 separate public speaker sessions that are really designed to educate the public on housing facts and issues that are meant to be engaging, informative, bust housing myths, communicate the facts, and really have opportunities for people to engage with the information through a variety of materials and provide their thoughts and feedback on the direction of this work. They're designed to follow each of the phases so that people can say their thoughts during a particular part of the project, watch how they influence the development of materials into the next phase, and then react again. So we're hoping that this kind of creates that iterative process of we are hearing your feedback and we're showing you how it's informing what we're putting together, and did we hit the mark yet? What else are we missing? So we're really hoping that creates a bit more trust in the process, more transparency in how things are being developed, and just creates a more healthy kind of repertoire and dialogue with the broader community. between all of you and us as well. So, the first session will be in the fall, and we'll want to nail down a date and a time and a location, probably by the next meeting, so that we can begin preparing and so that we have a lot of time to get the word out. And so we've already been hearing some comments tonight about concerns with kind of times and things, which is great. We'll use that information as we start to have conversations about potential dates and times and whatnot. Does anyone have any thoughts, though, on that, on scheduling a day, a time, any that pop into your head of just like stay away from that time that we might not be aware of, or?
Well, it's also a little bit venue-driven,
Yep.
Liz. We have a terrific venue, I'm not sure you've seen it, if we have permission from Colby Sawyer to use their Wheeler Hall.
Yep.
Which is a fabulous venue in many respects. It's warm, it's academic, it's a sort of respected sort of decor. People are comfortable voicing opinions. We can have them provide the food. We can obviously pay for it as part of our grant. So finding a good venue is sort of the first step. And then also working around some other calendars. We don't want to get too close to the end of November. We want to make sure RKG is ready. Of course, you guys will always be ready when you need to be, but schedule all that. So just some preliminary thoughts.
Great.
I would also just try to avoid election week. A lot of these folks serve in capacities for elections
Yes.
that they're going to have a busy day on the 5th.
Great, perfect. We heard some other bits of information we've recorded, like making sure there's food, and so those are small, but some of the most important details. So, yeah, yep.
So I think if you sort of map out what seems to be a good range, more than just October, November, we can come up with it and try to nail it down, I think, right, Adam?
Great.
And then we can reach out to Colby Sawyer. They will, of course, be in session, so we have to work around them.
Great.
If they'll provide it.
Thanksgiving is late this year, too. It's not till the 28th, so it gets us a little bit of extra time between election and Thanksgiving.
We've had good luck then as opposed to October, which seems like some people are traveling. There's a lot of, if the weather's nice, which Octobers have been really nice, we've had a harder time. But also it'll be which day of the week. It sounds like daytime is preferable, so it might be a weekend day. So we'll want to talk with you guys about that in between the meetings.
Yeah, I'd just like to advocate, I'm new here, by the way, so I'm not sure what I'm supposed to say and what I'm not yet, but
Whatever you want.
Very good. So just speaking sort of on behalf of people my age-ish in town, like the 5:30 on a weeknight couldn't possibly be a worse time for those of us with little kids. And so just kind of, I'm not coming here with a great example of what a great time would be, but, I'd love to just kind of think through that a little bit and try to figure out like how we can engage with families a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because the families that I've been speaking to are either really disengaged on this issue, but once you have 3-sentence conversation with them, they're immediately engaged.
Yeah.
Or they are engaged and just can't come to any of these things. So
Yep.
Would a weekend be better, do you think?
I think it would. Especially if you're talking November, it's before people are traveling for the holidays. There's usually sports, so people are kind of still around a good bit. Of course, that raises all manner of different challenges with childcare and whatnot, but I'm sure there are ways to noodle around that.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Bibi.
Just want to point out one quick thing. I just looked on the calendar. So we've been doing these community gatherings that the selectmen host twice a year. So this in the fall it was December 15th, and we usually time it when the budget is done because we talk a little bit about the budget ahead of the March meeting to give a little preview. So that's probably would be the timing for us to do it again this year. So just giving you a heads up of that date. So end of October, beginning of November would probably be the best for your session. Yep.
Great.
And I like a community, a home. So swap it.
Good thinking. Thank you.
So the election in November is on the 10th? I need to look. I think it's November 10th. Is it the 10th, not the 11th, or is it the 11th?
The 5th, November 5th.
It's the 5th. It's the 5th, right. I think we need to be aware of these kids' sports having ended, which is October. They're still playing outside soccer and stuff till the end of October. So
Yep.
if we're trying to bring a younger group in,
Yep.
it's going to have to be a 7 p.m.-ish meeting.
Yep, good points. And we want to reach out to the people who, for example, don't read QR codes, people who vote, but we want to bring everybody. So let's find a time. I can reach out to Colby Sawyer and see if they have if they're willing to make it available and when we could do it.
That would be great.
I'm guessing that Saturday or a weekend may be tougher for them because a lot of their IT staff and people that we use when we use this space are Monday through Friday employees. I don't know if there's additional fees that are incurred with using that, but we can certainly.
Maybe we could hold it in the cafeteria.
And when we did the master plan 5 or 6 years ago, I mean, we held things at a different time and you hit a different crowd at
I was
times.
just about to say that.
Whether it was just the season that we had the Saturday events, they were the worst attended of our master plan events. When the selectmen did the forum, was that 3 years ago? We did a Saturday and then a Monday night, a Saturday morning and then 2 days later. And I think it was basically 50-50. I mean, both were fairly well attended. It was fairly hot button at the time. But I think, no matter what time you choose, there's some group that's excluded from wanting to attend.
Peter, do you remember what time and day we had the one at Colby, the first one?
It was an weekday evening. Yeah, I don't remember which day of the week.
But it was well attended.
It was, yep. And we did another one at the Kearsarge Professional Development Center. That was the second one. That was also an evening, standing room only.
Same people.
What's that, Nan?
A lot of same people.
Same people.
And
So changing the time would be a good idea. We don't want to do it twice, but trying to.
right, in some ways, though, I wonder if we have to do a multi-pronged approach because I don't think we're going to get the sort of family age people to show up at the same time as the boomer crowd and I mean like the Colby Sawyer, but that's a good example because I mean I attend the Colby Sawyer breakfasts and they're great, but I am always the youngest person in the room by probably 30 years, and so they are very well attended, but we're not really hitting a broad cross section of the crowd.
Right. We can do a little bit of crunching as far as, even looking at options to have 2 back-to-back in one day that are afternoon and evening.
Yes, sure.
So if we end up picking the best time we think and trying it, you could also do different times for the different ones, but they are going to be, as you saw, the 3 different phases, the 3 different conversations. If we pick a time and we get some of the folks there and we still miss the families or we still miss folks that don't want to come out on that particular day, the goal would be to record it. And we can still provide a feedback mechanism. So often we provide an online feedback mechanism and a paper feedback mechanism. So we'll make sure the clerk gets a bunch of them so he can hand them out to people. But people can just write down their questions, their comments. Sometimes it'll show to what degree they actually looked at the information. So we could try to play around with that to make sure we're catching people, because also some people are just going to be away and they would want to participate.
And that's actually, I think it was the ones that the selectmen did, we had a virtual component and we had the staffing that was there so that, I was dedicated just to reading the questions from the folks on Zoom. And knowing a lot of people who were on Zoom, it really was a lot of the younger people with families who, maybe their kids were in the room with them, but they were on their laptop listening and able to participate. And so that may actually be the best way of doing it. Is it might be a weeknight starting a little bit later after dinner so that they can at least sign on from home. They don't have to physically come to the building. It may constrain the space that we can use a little bit. The professional development center at the school is set up particularly well for that. We, in theory, are set up for it here, but I don't think we'd have the in-person capacity that we'd hope for anyways in this room. I don't know what the ability is for the Colby Sawyer spaces. It very well could have that capability for Zoom participation. I just haven't utilized it before.
Okay.
If you had just one or two speakers, though, and how many people could we fit in this room? Looks like you have quite a few chairs.
That's a good question. I really don't know. I'd have to ask the fire marshal what the capacity
Okay.
is.
Because this is an option, it would be a really different thing. You'd all be encouraged to participate, not have to sit up here as a committee.
I think there's a plaque, but it's in the front vestibule, I believe. We can look after.
Through the door that says not an exit.
It is an emergency exit for the record.
Oh, I see, okay.
But the,
Wow. Wow. That's more than I thought.
that being said, I do not think we have 200 chairs, so.
Standing room only.
Oh, standing. Oh, geez.
Right.
Well, it'd be brief.
And it's 90 or so. Oh, yeah, wow.
Well, and I would like to have some hospitality, some refreshments or something,
Yep.
to really make it, kick off the meeting, give people comfortable, and
Yep.
so. Could do that. I think we're allowed to have some food in here, aren't we? Okay.
For sure.
Can I just mention one more? Yeah, just to tack onto the recording idea is, and I think this is a reasonable thing to suggest or offer, the idea of leaning on you all and the contacts that you have to host, an evening or a Saturday morning with kids running around, sort of a little watch party, a watch gathering, so that we can reach out to specific groups that may have voted a specific way and say, hey, come over to my house on Saturday morning or Friday night, and we'll do this thing, and then we can do something else. We can watch this recording, we can talk about it, and then we can sort of move on. So the idea of having these house watch parties, I think, can remove some people who may have a barrier to entry. Just a food for thought.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I would gladly host one myself, and I know some other people who probably would too. And
Awesome.
The reality is, the demographic that I'm sort of speaking to a lot, we are the people who will scan a QR code and watch even if it's not on Zoom live, maybe it's a recorded meeting that we watch at a more opportune time.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
I think Zach's watch party idea is creative. We've seen communities come up with some of the best ideas, not ideas we brought, but ideas they generated. In Bar Harbor last May, they held a bunch of different sessions, but one of them they held at Atlantic Brewing. And it was a big controversy in town whether or not they could have something at a brewery. You weren't required to drink alcohol or buy food. We had one of the best attend municipal meetings because people said, well, this seems fun. And we had people who chose not to eat or drink, but just liked the environment and came to participate and talk, where they felt like coming to this kind of a venue was a little bit boring and not how they wanted to spend their time. So now they've done it at least one at a time. And so maybe you have this out there and say, if you want to talk about the video, come to the Flying Goose or come wherever. And you could have as many of these discussion circles or watch parties as you want, as you have the capacity for.
Any other thoughts? We're talking about next steps then. You want to touch on that?
Next steps.
Okay.
Steve.
All right. I'm not going to talk about the speaker series again. So we'll take the feedback received from all of you, the ideas, and Liz will work her graphic design magic and come up with some logo ideas, some branding ideas. We'll get those out to you ahead of the July meeting, and we'll do the best we can to get them out early if we can. But we want to give you time to think about it and then bounce ideas off you. And please do what you did tonight. Tell us if that doesn't hit right, or I would change this. So we'll get working on that. Zach is excited to get back into the GIS. And so when you come back to us for another meeting, we talked with Peter and Adam about availability of meetings and trying to work around all of our vacation schedules. We ended up at July 31st because we wanted to give enough time too that Zach would have enough of his GIS show to be able to give you a meeting with a lot of value. So that's our plan. Those are the things we're focused on. We're getting Fougere Planning and Development and RKG Associates under contract next. We got a contract with the town, and so we'll be doing that behind the scenes so that they can get started as well. That's all I have.
Any other thoughts? The only other quick thing, just going back briefly on the speaker series. I would think that during the visioning stage, we may need to have more than one. You might just think about that. Because we're really throwing out ideas and looking for reactions, and it might take more than one, or a different format, but it may be more than that.
On your topic on format, I'm thinking that same series we did, Liz, in Bar Harbor, there was a presentation component that brought people up to speed and gave them ideas, and then we broke out into smaller breakout groups where people got to work together on ideas and really share. And so if you weren't comfortable standing up in front of 200 people, but you might talk to 6, there was that. So, and then we came back together. And so maybe it's more than one, and maybe we play around with these formats. Yep.
I didn't want to get too far from the schedule for the next meeting, and then we're going to get some public comment. July 31st, then, I was suggesting 5:30. I know that's hard. I'm sorry, Neil, and thank you for your participation.
You're welcome. I will be on vacation that day anyway, so.
Okay, all right.
No
Well,
need
that
to
happens.
schedule around me.
Don't cancel your vacation. Is that generally okay, the 31st? Okay. 5:30, is that a good time? That is on a Wednesday. So, okay, that sounds fine. Let's open up for public comment on any topic, please. John?
I wanted to ask, on the grant proposal, the $103,000, will that cover the next 3 years and for the completion of their group, or will it require additional finance?
No, this is a self-contained, self-funded project for that purpose. That's all. That's a lot. That's what we have for this purpose, and their contract is tied to it. So there's nothing beyond that.
And the final report would be given in January of 2026, or?
Well, I'm not sure it'll be culminated in a final report, per se. There will be a number of deliverables that we'll have. RKG will do a report. I think we don't want to just have reports for purposes of reports, but more the culmination is a lot of good thinking and feedback. It will come by way of some deliverable, but I'm not sure it'll be a self-contained report.
Okay. And then I wanted to ask you'll be also aware of the other projects that we have going in New London, Twin Pines, et cetera, and the other major studies that are currently going on. And did you mention, Liz, you will include Colby
Yes,
on that?
that was an oversight.
And the definitions, when you look at who we are, the question of who are we engaging, will we be given definitions of what you mean by, for example, older adults? What does that mean? Or developers?
Depends on who you ask.
What does that mean?
But yeah, we can provide a little bit more clarifying information on that.
Okay.
It's really more for the conversation at this level to use it as a brainstorming function to figure out who these people are. So, and that, as we did tonight, the challenge is the barriers to getting out to them, so we can try to overcome those barriers and include them in the process.
Yep.
Okay. And will you also be looking at involving the planning board, that is the New London Planning Board, to get some of their thoughts of
Yes,
where they
absolutely. Yep.
think we're headed? Would this also involve expanding possible, us looking to possible new businesses that might fit into the community?
Probably not. I mean, there'll be some economic data that we'll see from RKG that might generate some conversation, especially if they said, medical and life science stuff looked like a possibility, or other things. It may open up conversations that may go away from this group, but it's not the focus of the HOP grant, the Housing Opportunity Grant.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comment? Karen? Thank you.
I guess, excuse me, I have more of a question than a comment. The thing that's like running through the back of my mind, and I may have missed it, so excuse me if that's the case. Like if I'm trying to understand what it is where, you're trying to build a brand for and build a program for. I'm trying to like say, oh, okay, so what is the mission here? Like how have you defined, like what is it you're trying to do, like in a short paragraph or just a few sentences that kind of tightly define that. And I feel like I don't have a grasp on that. And that could be, like I say, I've missed something, but I think something like that really crisp could be helpful to people. Thank you.
Sort of a mission statement.
Yeah, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, Steve, you probably couldn't hear me. You said that'd be good for the website. Yeah.
Project description, something short.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is focused on the phases that we're going through, but the bottom line is community engagement, because our job is to work for the townspeople,
Oh,
and we're trying to lead them through, but you're talking about a kind of a mission statement.
Well, I'm thinking if you're inviting people in for the input, like to what purpose? That's what I'm thinking.
Yep,
Thank
yep.
you.
And actually, not to put her on the spot, but Marilyn in previous meetings had said, if we're going to do these panels, they need to have some message, a byline so people understand what it is and why they want to be there. I think that's what she said. Something like that. I credit you with having said that.
I think she said they have to have sizzle.
There you go. Yes, John?
Peter, just a short one.
Yeah.
Is this going to be an update to the master plan in some way?
No, this is not connected with the master plan. The master plan stands on its own, and it's a guideline for the select board, the planning board, and for us. But this is separate and supplemental.
While I would say it's separate, I would say that it is part of the implementation of the master plan, that there were key recommendations of the master plan for housing, and this would be carrying those recommendations out.
Okay. Adam, help me. Was it 2018? I forgot when you did that master plan.
It started in 2018, but it wasn't officially adopted until 2021.
Okay. Thank you.
Renee?
Hi guys, Renee Thiel, Housing Navigator with UVLS RPC, and yes, we had to fall asleep to that at night so we could say it. So I was just going to say one thing on demographic, like you asked about what people to reach and who. You probably already have hit this before, so I might be speaking to the choir, but one thing that I found in my work is renters. Renters don't think that they necessarily have a seat at the table. They are residents, they do vote, they can vote. Sometimes they don't even think they can vote. And so, yeah, that's one demographic that I've, and or tying in with that, excuse me, is maybe adult, kids who've come back and moved back in with mom and dad for a little bit, can't find a home. They also are still technically a resident. They're still also voice matters and vote matters. So those are two that kind of I've come across that are like, I don't have any say in this. I don't own property here. That's not how it works. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Good points. Thank you. Thank you. Any other thoughts? Good participation. Thank you. Quickly then, I try to keep it to an hour and a half. Adam, would you do an update on the housing projects that we have underway?
The only update I have, I think you probably are mostly aware, is that Twin Pines was not successful with the water in their first sites, so they are moving on to their second test sites. They are bringing in basically a fancy technical dowser with actual electronic equipment. I think it actually happened last Friday, so stay tuned. Hopefully the next one will hit water.
And the property behind the hospital?
Nothing new to report on Continuum at this point. They're still working on their permitting and financing at the sort of larger levels than the town.
Did they clear the water issue?
They did hit water, so they are good as far as the capacity. Those are some of the permitting they have to go through now that they have their source identified. They have to go through the community water system permitting of DES. And so there may be implications there that in order to accommodate that infrastructure that they need to come back to the planning board, but still to be determined at this point.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other comments, thoughts, new business? No? Oh, yes, Karen.
I had just noticed on the agenda, Adam, there you had New London Water New London Springfield Water Precinct, so if there's anything regarding that, thank you.
I don't really have any, I'm not sure if you were going for a particular
I think
update, Peter, but-
that's old.
Okay.
I just picked that up from an old agenda. No, good question. No, sorry.
No, that's good.
I know of nothing.
I probably know as much as being stuck in the traffic as all of you for the last couple of weeks, but it looks like things are going well.
And they are doing outreach every week to tell us what's going to be going on construction-wise, so that's helpful.
Correct.
No, I guess what I was curious about, I think it came up when the demonstration of the software, and the question was asked by someone in the audience, well, sorry, if indeed the software showed the boundaries or the connections with the water precinct, and I think the answer was it doesn't.
So the answer was that the boundaries are on there, but
The
that does
boundary-
not actually show the physical water line locations.
Oh, okay, but it does show the boundaries?
Correct. The
Oh,
water
that's
precinct
terrific.
is a layer. The water precinct itself didn't have that. Our office created that about a year and a half ago, maybe only a year ago. But we cataloged all of the properties who are, at least a portion of them is in the water precinct, had our mappers. We had to create an Excel spreadsheet that was able to be converted to GIS, and had our mappers create that layer.
So it is on the software then, if you were doing the what-ifs, you could play that out in terms of connections for the water system? I guess that's
Not to
what
that
I'm
level. I
asking
mean,
about.
it's higher level because it's
Okay.
just saying which properties have a connection somewhere. It doesn't tell you what the feasibility is. So, for example, like up on Morgan Hill, those properties are in the water precinct, but the actual water line is quite a ways from there. And so, even houses that have been built up on Morgan Hill in the last 5 years, they've drilled their own wells because it's hundreds of thousands of dollars to get the water line to them. So, it really only tells half the story as far as the feasibility of actually connecting to water. Without having the actual lines themselves mapped entirely, you're sort of missing that second piece of the puzzle.
Interesting. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Good point. We're going to work on that, where the water line is. It's unfortunately not information we've been given or given access to by the water precinct, so we'll work on that.
And I do think every time they conduct a project like this, their data gets better because obviously technology is different. I think probably they've been very focused on the water main. I think probably asset management is something that will come next, and that will probably improve their offerings on a technical side of things. Yep.
Great. Then I will accept a motion to adjourn. Second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. We'll see you on the 31st, and watch your emails.
Thank you.